Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy. This is the Spyderco P.I.T.S, Pie in the Sky, P.I.T.S, whatever it is. And this was designed by a guy named Mike Reed, who used that as his screen name on a forum at one point in time. But anyways, neither here nor there. I do want to thank very much my buddy Kale for sending this guy along, and that's Kale with a C, not with a K, like the stuff you buy at Whole Foods and put in expensive salads. Different kind of Kale entirely. I don't know if hippies like him, but I sure do, because he sent this along. So thanks very much there, Kale. Next thing, this is a non-locking knife, and that is kind of its shtick. This is a knife where there is no lock mechanism to it at all. It is a slip joint. In fact, it's using a strange system for it. You can see this little arm on the back here has a fair amount of spring tension to it, and so what you do is when you pop the blade up, you can see that this rides up onto the back of the blade there, and then when you close the blade, it pops back down. That provides you detent. And so it is non-locking, but it is actually pretty burly. I mean, it's not going to accidentally shut, especially when you're applying downward pressure here. So it's a neat little idea. There's not a disassembly on this guy, partly because this has got this blasted hardware that shows snail trails and whatnot really easily, and I don't want to hurt it, and partly because you can see the entire workings of it from the outside here. So there you go. And then finally, of course, size comparison. Right here is your Spyderco Delica, so you can see it's in that same vicinity, although larger in the handle. Right here is your steel wheel cut jack in 3.5-inch blade, and right here is your Ontario Rat number 2 in AUS-8 steel. So there you go. That's your size comparison. Let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this particular pocket knife here. Good side. First off, by the way, using a slightly different mat here. Let me know how you like it in the comments. But anyways, trying things out always. First, on the good side, I do like the anodization. This blue is a nice shade, and it's pretty. It's got some disadvantages. We'll talk about that in a little bit here, but it is absolutely a pretty thing. It makes the knife a little more attractive and makes it stand out a little bit more, which I like. Next thing, I love the carryability of this knife, partly because it's got this wire clip, and I believe that the Spyderco wire clip is among the best clips in the world, and it's done in a way that it carries nice and deeply. The knife is also very thin. If we compare it even to the Spyderco Delica, this is thinner than the Delica, which is pretty impressive and something I enjoy, and so that's very good. And, you know, it carries very nicely because of that thinness, because of the lightweightness on it. Here, I'll throw it on a scale, why not, right? It carries beautifully in that way. Right here, 3.2 ounces, not bad whatsoever. And the blade length on it is coming in at about 3 inches. So a little more than 1 ounce an inch, but still, no big complaints there. Next thing, the blade on it is a nice shape. It is very thin behind the edge, which I appreciate, so it cuts well. And it's got a nice front region here with some scrapeability as well as a flat area. It's a nice, good, practical blade shape. So that's good. Ergonomically speaking, this is doing pretty good. It's got very nice balance in the hand, which I gotta say I appreciate. It feels very lively in the hand, which is good. And it also, it fits very well. And with this serving as a finger guard, your hand's not going anywhere. It's contoured well. It's a solid ergonomic design. So I appreciate that very much. Next thing, this is a truly ambidextrous knife. Because it is non-locking, there's no lock to disengage, and so that's fine. And then it is the clip can be switched to either side, and so it can. This is quite literally truly ambidextrous, and that's kind of neat. It's not something you see all that often in a world of liner locks and frame locks and whatnot. So there you go. Next thing, it does have, actually, final thing on the good side, this has the world's largest lanyard hole. I don't consider this to be good in the classical sense, but it does amuse me, and that's good, so it's good. This little hole right here, you can see here that the blade stops, and in fact, this hole, if you can see there, has G10 all around it, so that literally the blade could not cut your lanyard. And so this big old thing here could be a lanyard hole. So could this back one, but I am picturing using like a big old length of climbing rope as your lanyard on this guy. That would be pretty entertaining, although, I don't know, that may not be possible. You look at it, a little less than 1 centimeter there of diameter, but still, that amuses me, and so that's good. And that, on the whole, is the good of this knife. It's got the world's biggest lanyard hole. It is truly ambidextrous, which is nice. Good ergonomics, nice blade shape. It is very nice to carry because it's thin in the pocket and it's got a great clip and it has some nice anodization. Let's talk about what's great about this guy. Great side, this is a very, very strong non-locking knife. Generally speaking, I review locking knives. And generally speaking, I think locking knives are a better choice for more people. It gives you a little bit more of a margin of safety. Not because you need to be doing a lot of, slashy, stabby cuts, but it is possible, for instance, as you dip into a bag, to have something snag on the back of the blade, or to have something bind up in material, and then you can have the blade try and close on your hand with a non-locking knife. So I tend to prefer non-locking knives. The thing is, this is a nicely done system, because as you are cutting down onto something, as you are gripping this knife tightly, your thumb is pressing this guy right here into its little groove, which means that if you're grabbing that, it's really hard to disengage that blade. This is basically, for all intents and purposes, locked. And even if it does happen to come unlocked, it uses the finger guard down here, and that prevents it from closing onto your hand accidentally, because this dull section here is just going to press against your finger. Not a big deal. And so this is a very strong non-locking sort of knife, and that's kind of a niche, but it's an interesting niche, and it's one that I appreciate Spyderco making available to people who might need it. And it also, I gotta be honest, highlights the absurdity of non-locking knife laws, because really, is this going to be... okay, I don't need to scare people. It is what it is, but I appreciate very much that this has a very, very strong and interesting locking mechanism, even though it is non-locking. So it's not a locking mechanism, I guess. Either way, that's what's great. Let's talk about what's bad. Okay, so on the bad side, first off, the centering, just a little nitpick here, but the centering on this guy is slightly off. It's favoring, well, there's not really a lock or a show side, but it's favoring the clip side for right side carry. I'm lost here, guys. Either way, centering's off. It's something they can work on. Next thing, this does need a little bit of a cutout, I think, to access the spider hole. Because you can see here that the spider hole, you can get to it, but you're really kind of having to push your thumb past the scale here and snag in that top corner there. And that's not a super comfortable experience, and makes the knife on the whole a little bit less pleasant to operate than you might think. So I would almost, I'd prefer if they maybe cut this down a little bit so you could access that a little better. That said, the ergonomics might get a little bit weird. Maybe that's why they've done it. I don't know, but it is something I'd like to see go on there. Next thing is the steel. This is N690CO. And look, I gotta be honest, N690 is fine. It's a steel that is absolutely good to go for everyday carry. It's adequate. It takes a nice edge easily. But I'll be honest, it's not something that I'm particularly in love with. And it seems to be around VG10 in terms of edge holding. And Cedric Ada, Gear and Outdoors, their steel tests agree. You may have different priorities, but for me, I want something that's got a little bit more wear resistance, and particularly if I'm paying a higher end price point for something, I'd like to see something a little bit better than N690. It's a steel that leaves me entirely cold and doesn't seem to work as well in my life as some of your higher end stuff. So on a higher end knife, I'd like to see something a little better. But again, your priorities may be different. Maybe you want sharpenability, whatever. This is more of a nitpick than anything. One thing that is absolutely not a nitpick is that this is using a blasted, very finely blasted, then anodized finish. And unfortunately, what that means is that you get these little snail trails and scrapes very, very easily on this guy. I don't know whether these are cases where a softer metal is touched up against it and kind of transferred into the grain structure of the blasting, or whether the anodization has been worn off. Maybe a little from each. But either way, these stripes become super visible very, very quickly. And that's not something that I appreciate very much. And this is why I tend to prefer a stonewash finish over a blasted one, particularly if you're going to anodize. These snail trails are definitely very salient here, and on the anodized knife, not so great. So to me, at least, that's what's bad about this guy, is that it does pick up those snail trails and scratches and scrapes very readily. N690 is not a steel that I personally am in love with, because I tend to like a little more edge retention, or wear resistance, that is. It's asking for a spider hole access cutoff, although I know that could probably impact the ergos there. And then the centering is a little off. Let's talk about what's ugly here. Okay, there are 3 ugly issues here, and 2 of them are maybe not ugly, but they're really annoying to me, and so they're going in the ugly, damn it, because I'm allowed to have opinions. I would hope at this point. But anyways, first off, I'm not a huge fan of the nubbin in the back here. This is not a flipper tab. This is not anything functional. I mean, you can press slightly on the blade there, but it doesn't do much for you. But it's just kind of there, and all it really does is snag on things, or attack your wallet, your phone, whatever. It's like it's a vestigial pocket pecker. I understand kind of why it's there, because they need this blade guard, and they really do. I mean, that helps you prevent the knife from closing on your fingers. It is a great thing for it to be there, but at some level I wish that there were a little bit more handle in order to accommodate that, so there's not that issue. But it's made much worse by the fact that it is actually very sharp on the edges, which brings us to the next ugly point, which is that this is made in the Maniago, Italy factory, and they tend to do fine work. I mean, it's not Taichung or Golden standards, but it's okay. But they never freaking chamfer the knives. All of the edges that are not supposed to be sharp on this knife are indeed sharp. The back of the blade here, the flipper tab, well, it's not a flipper tab, but you know what I'm talking about here. This little nub in there is absolutely sharp. These little regions here, and then most frustratingly, the spider hole and this little region right here. These are all sharp to the extent where if you try and do like a middle finger flick, it will actually just pull material off of your fingernails. It's freaking ugly, and I'm sorry, this is a finishing step. This is something that should just be happening as a matter of course on a $240 knife. You can do it your damn self with a shopmaker stone, and heck, I hope that Eric Glesser sees this and sends him a load of shopmaker stones. It says, hey guys, go to town. Seriously, it's your job. But it is your job. I'm sorry. That needs to be finished properly. It's getting to be a little bit much, and it is absolutely a common sin from Maniago. So guys, get on it there. Then finally, the price on this guy is high. You're looking at $240, and that's getting you, certainly, it's a fine knife. It's mostly nicely finished, although they didn't quite finish it. And it's getting you a steel that's fine, I guess. And I get that it's weird that they're not going to sell 1 million of these, and you know it's made in Europe. But the thing is, look, $240 buys you a lot of knives, absolutely 100%. And even compared to some of the other non-locking offerings out there, this is way the heck up there. And so I feel like this price point is very, very, very high. It may be what it costs to make it, but it's not a compelling value. So to me, that's what's ugly, is that this is just not a great value, that Maniago factory needs to learn to chamfer the damn edges because it's getting old, guys. And then finally, they've managed to put a little tiny pocket pecker on a slip joint knife, which is pretty entertaining here. So there you go. Let's talk about the final conclusion. Look, final conclusion, this is sort of a knife that is only as good as the options available to you. If you are in a region with stupid laws made by scared people that prevent you from having a locking knife, you know what, this is a fine choice. It's got this unusual slip joint mechanism, which is very, very safe. There is no way that this knife is going to close and cut your hand as it is configured right here. It is very well done in that way. It's also reasonably well built. It's very carryable, it's ambidextrous, and most importantly to me is that it's serving this underserved market in the knife community, and I appreciate very much that Spyderco is willing to do this. I mean, they could stick to making, you know, these huge locking tactical pieces as the rest of the knife world does, but no, they're doing crazy things like this for people dealing with unfortunate legal situations. So I like the fact that this knife exists, but honestly, I like that it exists a lot more than I like the knife, because it's got some serious limitations. It's got a hard-to-access Spidey hole. The steel on it is, okay. It's got the micro pocket pecker thing. The edges are all unfinished because it's made in Italy. And then, toughest of all, the price tag. And the price tag is the biggest bugaboo here. For $240, you could buy a lot of really incredible knives. And, you know, frankly, even if I lived in a place where non-locking was the law of the land, I cannot imagine buying this knife over the UKPK, which is a certified gem, locking or not. Especially when you can get the UKPK in S110V, incredible steel, for 1/3 of this price. To me, at least, the UKPK was an incredible knife no matter what options you have. I would carry a UKPK every day, even living in the States where non-locking is not a thing, but this guy absolutely feels more like a compromise. And it's also worth saying that the UKPK, because of a similar finger choil arrangement, also wasn't going to close on your hands anyways. And so this guy feels like a compromise, whereas the UKPK really honestly didn't. And so, like I said, this is a knife that's defined that is, by your options. If you're in a non-locking region, this could be something that you pick up for harder use, or to just have a little bit more variety, to have a titanium locking knife. That's cool. There, I get it. And this is way, way better when it is a big fish in a very small pond of non-locking knives. But at least for me, with the wealth of options available to me for locking and non-locking knives, I just don't find enough joy here to overcome the limitations. And with a price tag like this, alas, I'm afraid that the pie in the sky is, at least to me, well, it's the P.I.T.S. Anyways, hope this has been interesting to you, and that you find this interesting, and that you have yourselves a wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.